Here's Hermes, a famous god from ancient Greek mythology, the one you see right here on your screen. Look at him. Maybe he has winged sandals on his feet, a special hat, and that interesting staff in his hand. He looks ready for action, doesn't he? Now, when we think about the Greek gods, most of them had one main job, one big area they were in charge of. Think about Zeus, the king of the gods. He was the god of the sky and thunder. Poseidon was the god of the sea. Athena was the goddess of wisdom and warfare. They each had their special focus. But Hermes? Hermes was different. He didn't just have one job. He had lots of them. He was super busy. What did he do? Well, he was the main messenger for all the other gods, especially his father Zeus. He was also the god who protected travelers when they were out on the roads. He was the god of trade, people buying and selling things. He was even known as the god of thieves and tricksters because he was so clever. And, on top of all that, he had the important job of guiding the souls of people who had died to the underworld, the land of the dead. Wow, that's a lot of different jobs for just one god, isn't it? Messenger, traveler protector, god of trade, god of thieves, guide for the dead. How did he manage it all? This variety is what makes Hermes so unique and interesting compared to the other gods on Mount Olympus. He wasn't stuck in just one place or focused on just one thing. He was always moving, always connecting different people and different worlds. So, as we keep looking at Hermes standing here, ready to go, we're going to explore all these different roles. We'll look at the stories that explain how he got these jobs and what they meant to the ancient Greeks. And we'll see how the ideas Hermes represents, things like communication, travel, cleverness, and guiding people through changes, are still important in our lives today. Let's find out more about this incredibly busy, incredibly clever god. So, how did Hermes become this god of so many different things? To understand him, we need to go right back to the very beginning, the day he was born. Look at him standing there on the screen, looking so alert and ready. That quickness, that cleverness you might see in his eyes, it was there from the absolute start. Hermes was the son of Zeus, the king of the gods, and a quieter, beautiful goddess or nymph named Maia. Unlike many gods born on Mount Olympus with lots of fuss, Hermes was born secretly in a hidden cave on a mountain called Cyllene. Maybe Maia wanted a peaceful place for her son. But Hermes wasn't going to stay quiet for long. The stories say he was born early in the morning, just as the sun was rising, and he grew incredibly fast. By midday, just a few hours after being born, he wasn't acting like a normal baby at all. He could already walk, he could talk, and he was already feeling bored just lying in his crib. He wanted adventure. He was born with that speedy energy you might imagine when you see his winged sandals in pictures like this one. Speed wasn't something he learned. It was part of who he was from the first moment. What was the first thing this super fast baby decided to do? He got hungry, but not for milk. Baby Hermes decided he wanted meat. Now, that's pretty unusual for a newborn baby, even a god. It shows right away that Hermes was different, maybe a little bit wild, with his own unique desires. So, what did he do? He cleverly slipped out of his cozy blankets and his crib while his mother Maia wasn't looking, and tiptoed out of the cave. His mission: find some food, specifically cattle. He knew, somehow, because he was a god, even as a baby, that his older half-brother, Apollo, had a herd of beautiful, sacred cattle grazing in the mountains nearby. Apollo was a very important god, the god of the sun, music, prophecy, and archery. Messing with Apollo was a risky idea, but baby Hermes wasn't easily scared. Off he went, incredibly fast for a baby, and he was already thinking cleverly. He didn't want anyone to know where he was going. So, some stories say he walked backward, making footprints that looked like they were going towards the cave, not away from it. Others say he quickly made special little coverings for his feet, maybe out of bark or reeds, so he wouldn't leave any tracks at all. Even as a baby, He was already a master of hiding his movements. He found Apollo's herd easily. There were many beautiful cows there, sacred to his brother. Did he just take one or two? No, Hermes decided to steal a big group, maybe 50 of them. He somehow separated them from the rest and started driving them away. How did a baby manage 50 cows? Well, he was a god, so he had surprising strength. But mostly he used his cleverness, perhaps guiding them quietly so they wouldn't make much noise. And he made sure the cows also walked backward, or he guided them over rocky ground where their hoof prints wouldn't show clearly. He was covering his tracks perfectly. He led the stolen cattle a long way, finally finding another hidden cave. He carefully made the cows walk backward into this cave too, so anyone finding the entrance would think cows had walked out, not in. He hid them deep inside. He had successfully stolen from one of the most powerful gods, all before lunchtime on his first day alive. Now, his adventure wasn't quite over. On his way back towards his own cave, Hermes spotted a tortoise crawling along. An idea sparked in his incredibly quick mind. He picked up the tortoise. He knew just what to do. He took the empty tortoise shell, stretched some reeds or maybe animal gut across it, and fiddled with it until he had invented something completely new. It was the very first lyre, a beautiful stringed musical instrument, like a small harp. Think about that. On the same day he was born, he not only stole cattle but also invented a musical instrument. Look at Hermes standing there. You can imagine that quick mind, always thinking, always creating. After inventing the lyre, Hermes quickly went back to his home cave. He slipped back into his crib, wrapped himself in his blankets, and pretended to be a perfectly normal, innocent, sleeping baby. Maybe he even hid the lyre under the blankets. His mother Maya might have suspected something wasn't quite right. Maybe she noticed his tiny feet were dusty. Or maybe she just felt the energy of his adventure, but she couldn't possibly guess what he had really been up to. But Apollo wasn't just any god. He was the god of prophecy. He could often see things others couldn't. Soon, he realized his precious cattle were missing. He searched everywhere. It didn't take him long, using his divine powers, to figure out that his brand new baby brother was somehow involved. Apollo was furious. He stormed over to Maya's cave. Imagine the scene. The powerful, angry god Apollo confronting this tiny baby lying in his crib. Apollo demanded his cattle back, but baby Hermes was ready. He put on his most innocent face. He babbled like a baby, maybe yawned, and swore he didn't know anything about any cows. He said things like, "How could I steal cows? I was only born yesterday. All I care about is sleeping and my mother's milk." He was an amazing actor, a born trickster. Apollo didn't believe him for a second. He knew this baby was trouble. He grabbed Hermes and decided to take him straight to their father Zeus on Mount Olympus to settle the argument. So, they went before the king of the gods. Hermes kept up his innocent act, maybe looking wide-eyed and helpless. But Zeus, looking down, probably saw right through it. He was likely secretly amused and maybe even a little proud of how bold and incredibly clever his newest son was, even if he had stolen from Apollo. Zeus ordered Hermes to stop the tricks and show Apollo where the cattle were hidden. Hermes knew the game was up with his father watching. So, he led Apollo to the secret cave. Apollo was still very angry to see his beautiful cattle hidden away. But then, Hermes did something unexpected. He picked up the lyre he had invented. He started to play, and the music that came out was incredibly beautiful, magical, something no one had ever heard before. Apollo, the god of music himself, was absolutely captivated. He forgot his anger as he listened to the enchanting sounds. He had never heard anything like it. When Hermes finished playing, Apollo looked at the lyre with longing eyes. He loved it more than anything. And here comes the final clever move from Hermes. He saw how much Apollo wanted the lyre. So, a deal was made. Apollo offered to forgive Hermes completely for stealing the cattle. He might have even given Hermes some of the cattle, or perhaps something else valuable, like a special staff. In return, Hermes gave Apollo the lyre. Apollo was happy with his amazing new instrument, and Hermes, the baby trickster, got away with his crime and ended up with something valuable too. So, when you look at Hermes standing here, remember this story. He wasn't just born. He burst into the world full of energy, intelligence, and a talent for getting into trouble and cleverly getting out of it again. This amazing story, all happening on the very first day of his life, tells us almost everything we need to know about his nature. It shows that he was super fast, already adventuring within hours of his birth. It reveals he was incredibly clever, capable of hiding tracks, and even inventing the lyre. We learn he was a natural trickster, skilled at lying and acting innocent when confronted. The story also demonstrates he was good at making deals, shown by trading the lyre for forgiveness and perhaps more. Furthermore, it establishes his connection to animals through stealing and managing the cattle, and his connection to music through the invention of the lyre. He was truly born, ready for all the busy jobs he would soon take on. After that eventful first day, proving how fast and clever he was, it's no surprise that Hermes quickly became very important to the other gods on Mount Olympus. His most famous job, the one many people think of first, was being the official messenger of the gods. Look at him again on the screen. You often see him pictured with special items that helped him with this vital role. Notice his feet. Sometimes he wears special winged sandals. And look at his head. Often he wears a traveler's hat called a pedasos, which sometimes also has wings. These aren't just for decoration. They were symbols of his incredible speed, showing he could travel faster than anyone else, almost like flying, covering huge distances in the blink of an eye. Why did the gods, especially Zeus, need a messenger? Think about it. The gods lived high up on Mount Olympus, separate from the world of humans below. But they were very involved in human lives. They made decisions, gave commands, offered help, or sometimes caused trouble for mortals. How could they communicate their wishes or plans to people down on Earth? They needed someone who could travel instantly between worlds, delivering messages accurately and quickly. That someone was Hermes. Zeus, the king of the gods, had countless messages to send. He needed to communicate with other gods who might be far away, perhaps his brother Poseidon in the sea, or his other brother Hades down in the underworld. He needed to send warnings or instructions to heroes undertaking dangerous quests. He needed to let mortals know about important decisions made on Olympus. Hermes was his go-to guy for all of this. Because Hermes was so fast, thanks to those winged sandals, he could deliver a message from Zeus on Olympus to a distant corner of the earth and be back almost before anyone noticed he was gone. Look at him standing there. He always seems ready to dash off at a moment's notice. Being a messenger wasn't just about speed, though. It also required other skills that Hermes had plenty of. He needed to be reliable. The gods had to trust that he would deliver the message exactly as it was given, without changing it or getting it wrong. Even though he was a trickster in his youth, when he was on duty as a messenger, he was usually very dependable. He also needed to be diplomatic. Sometimes the messages were sensitive, perhaps between gods who weren't getting along. Hermes had to deliver the news carefully, maybe using his cleverness with words to smooth things over or avoid making things worse. He was good at talking, good at persuading, which helped him in his messenger duties. He also needed to be brave and able to handle tricky situations. Delivering messages sometimes meant going into dangerous places or speaking to powerful beings, gods or monsters, who might not be happy with the news. Hermes' speed and cleverness helped him get out of tight spots if needed. He wasn't just a delivery boy. He was a divine diplomat and agent who could navigate complex situations. Think about how important communication is in our own lives today. We rely on messages constantly. Phone calls, emails, text messages, news reports. We need information to flow quickly and accurately between people, between countries, between businesses. Without good communication, things fall apart, misunderstandings happen, and progress stops. Hermes, as the god of messengers, represents this fundamental human need for connection and the flow of information. He was like the ancient Greek version of the internet and the postal service, all rolled into one. He was the god who made connections possible, who kept everyone in the loop across different realms. Imagine the ancient Greeks looking up at the sky or thinking about faraway lands. They knew communication was vital. They needed ways to share news, give warnings, make agreements. Having a god like Hermes, dedicated to carrying messages instantly across any distance, must have been very reassuring. He represented the possibility of overcoming distance and staying connected. He was the link between the divine world and the human world, and between different parts of the human world too. His role as messenger sometimes involved more than just words. He might escort gods or goddesses when they needed to travel safely, acting as their guide and protector. He might deliver important objects. He was constantly moving, constantly facilitating interactions between others. He was the ultimate networker of the ancient world. So, when you look at Hermes with his winged gear, remember this crucial role. He wasn't just fast, he was the vital connection point. He carried the words, the thoughts, the commands that kept the world of gods and mortals running. He represents the power and importance of communication, the need to share information quickly and reliably, and the way messages can bridge vast distances and connect different worlds. He embodies that essential human drive to reach out, to share, and to stay connected. We know Hermes was the super-fast messenger, always zipping between worlds. Look at him standing there again. He looks like he's ready to move, doesn't he? That constant movement wasn't just for delivering messages for the gods. It also connected him deeply to another very important group of people, travelers. Hermes was widely known and worshipped as the protector god for anyone who was on a journey. Think about traveling in the ancient Greek world, long before cars, trains, or GPS on your phone. Going from one town to another, or especially across wilder countryside or mountains, could be quite dangerous. Roads might be rough and difficult. There was always the risk of getting lost, especially if you didn't know the area well. Bad weather could suddenly make a journey impossible or unsafe. And perhaps worst of all, there was the danger of bandits or robbers hiding along the way, ready to attack travelers and steal their belongings. It took courage and maybe a bit of luck to travel safely. This is where Hermes came in. People believed that Hermes watched over them when they were on the road. If you were setting out on a trip, you might say a little prayer to Hermes, asking him for a safe and successful journey. People hoped he would guide them, help them find their way, and protect them from dangers like thieves. It's a little funny, isn't it, that Hermes was also sometimes seen as the god of thieves? Maybe this meant he understood thieves so well that he knew how to protect travelers from them. Or perhaps it just showed he was connected to everything that happened on the road, both the good and the tricky parts. Look at his clever expression. Perhaps he understands all sides of the journey. Who were the travelers Hermes protected? Pretty much everyone who needed to move from one place to another. This included merchants, people who traveled long distances to buy and sell goods. Their journeys were vital for trade, bringing needed items to different cities, but they often carried valuable things, making them targets for robbers. Merchants especially relied on Hermes for good luck and protection on their routes. We'll talk more about his connection to trade later, but his role as protector of traveling merchants was a big part of it. He also protected heralds, people who carried official messages between cities or armies, similar to his own messenger role, explorers venturing into unknown lands, and even ordinary people visiting family or going to religious festivals in other towns. Anyone taking a risk by leaving the safety of their home could hope for Hermes' help. To travel, you need roads and paths. Hermes was also seen as the god who watched over the roads themselves. People wanted the pathways to be clear and safe. And this leads us to something very interesting connected to Hermes. Special stone markers called Hermes. Have you heard of these? They were very common all over ancient Greece. What was a herm? Usually, it was a square stone pillar. On top of the pillar, there would be a carved head of the god Hermes, often shown with his beard. Sometimes, lower down on the pillar, there were other carvings too. These herm pillars were placed in many important locations. You might find them at crossroads, where different roads met. This was a place where travelers had to make a decision about which way to go, and maybe felt a bit uncertain. Seeing a herm there, with the head of Hermes the guide, could feel reassuring. Herms were also often placed at the entrances to homes, temples, gyms, or public squares, and very importantly, at borders, the lines between different properties, or between the territory of one city-state and another. These herms were named after Hermes himself, showing his strong connection to roads, boundaries, and travel. What was their purpose? They served several functions. They acted as markers, showing the way or marking important boundaries. They were believed to bring good luck and turn away evil spirits or bad fortune from the place they guarded. Because Hermes was also linked to fertility, perhaps through his connection to shepherds and flocks from his babyhood story, the herms sometimes had symbols related to that, bringing good fortune for crops or families. Placing a herm was like putting up a sign saying, "This place is under the protection of Hermes. Travel safely, find your way, and may good fortune be here." Look at the statue of Hermes on screen. Imagine his head carved onto one of these stone pillars, watching over a busy road or a quiet border crossing. The idea of Hermes being present at borders and crossroads is very significant. Borders are places of transition, where you move from one space into another, from the familiar to the unfamiliar, perhaps from safety into the unknown. Crossroads are places of decision. Hermes, the god who moves easily between worlds, like Olympus, Earth, and the underworld, was the perfect god to watch over these places of change and passage. He represents the ability to cross boundaries safely, to navigate transitions smoothly. So, Hermes' role as god of the road connects directly to very basic human needs and experiences. We all travel, whether it's a short trip to the shops or a long journey to another country. We all want to feel safe when we travel. We all need to find our way, both literally on a map and sometimes figuratively in our lives when we face confusing choices, like being at a crossroads. We all understand the importance of boundaries and the feeling of crossing from one place or situation into another. Hermes, the god of travelers, roads, and boundaries, embodies our desire for safe passage, clear direction, and successful journeys. He represents the freedom of movement, the excitement of exploration, and the help we sometimes need to navigate the transitions in our lives. He's the friendly guide you hope to meet when you are far from home or facing an uncertain path. We've seen Hermes as the speedy messenger and the helpful guide for travelers. Look at him standing there. He seems quick not just in his feet, but also in his mind. This leads us to another couple of his important and perhaps slightly surprising roles. Hermes was the god of trade and merchants, but he was also known as the god of thieves and trickery. How can one god be linked to both making honest deals and sneaky stealing? Let's explore this interesting combination. First, let's talk about trade. We already mentioned that Hermes protected merchants, the people who traveled from place to place buying and selling goods. So, it makes perfect sense that he also became the god who watched over the activity of commerce itself. Trade was incredibly important in the ancient world, just as it is today. It allowed different cities and regions to get things they didn't have locally. It brought in wealth, spread ideas, and connected different cultures. What skills do you need to be successful in trade or business? You need to be clever. You need to be good at negotiating, making deals that are fair or maybe even slightly better for you. You need to be able to think quickly, perhaps spot opportunities that others miss. Sometimes, a bit of good luck helps too. Hermes, with his incredibly quick mind and his history of making that very clever deal with Apollo over the lyre, embodied all these qualities perfectly. Remember how he turned a situation where he was caught stealing into a profitable exchange? That's the kind of clever thinking that merchants admired and hoped for. So, merchants would pray to Hermes not just for safe travel, but also for success in their business dealings. They might ask for help in finding good customers, making profitable sales, or having good fortune in their ventures. Hermes was seen as the god who understood the marketplace, the art of the deal, the quick exchange of money and goods. Sometimes he was even shown carrying a purse or pouch, a clear symbol of his connection to money and commerce. He represented the possibility of gain, of increasing wealth through cleverness and exchange. Look at Hermes. Perhaps you can imagine him presiding over a busy marketplace, watching the quick exchange of goods and coins, maybe with a knowing smile. Now, for the more surprising part. Hermes was also openly called the god of thieves. Why would the ancient Greeks have a god associated with stealing? It seems strange to us, perhaps. But we need to remember how they thought about Hermes. What do thieves need to be successful? They need to be stealthy, able to move without being seen or heard. They need to be clever, planning carefully and figuring out how to get past locks or guards. They need to be quick-witted, able to think fast if things go wrong. And they often operate at night or on the edges of society. Do these qualities sound familiar? They sound a lot like Hermes. Remember, his very first act was stealing Apollo's cattle, using incredible stealth and cleverness to hide his tracks. He was the original divine thief. So, his connection to thieves wasn't necessarily saying that stealing was a good thing the gods approved of. It was more an acknowledgement that Hermes understood and embodied the skills needed for thievery, the cunning, the speed, the ability to operate unseen, the trickiness. Perhaps thieves prayed to him hoping he would grant them some of his cleverness or help them avoid getting caught. So, the link between trade and theft, for Hermes, might be cleverness and quick thinking. Both successful merchants and successful thieves often need to be adaptable, opportunistic, and maybe willing to bend the rules a little bit sometimes. They operate in a world of risk and reward. Hermes, being the master of the quick mind and clever tricks, understood this world perfectly. He represents that kind of street-smart intelligence that can be used for both making a profit in the market and, well, making a profit in other, less legal ways. This connects to his broader role as a trickster god. The story of stealing Apollo's cattle wasn't his only trick. Throughout Greek mythology, Hermes often uses his cleverness and trickery to help the other gods, or sometimes just for his own amusement. He might outsmart monsters, sneak into difficult places, or use his words cleverly to persuade or deceive others when needed. He wasn't seen as evil, like some trickster figures in other mythologies might be. His tricks were often part of his charm, showing his intelligence and his ability to solve problems in unexpected ways. Look at his posture or expression in the visual. Does he look like someone who might enjoy a clever joke or a well-played trick? Why was this aspect important? Because life isn't always straightforward. Sometimes you do need to be clever, to think outside the box, to find a tricky solution to a difficult problem. Sometimes negotiation feels like a battle of wits. Hermes represents this ability to use intelligence in flexible, adaptable, and sometimes unconventional ways. He reminds us that power isn't just about strength. It's also about brain power and being quick on your feet. So, how does this relate to us? We live in a world full of trade and exchange, from buying groceries to global business deals. We value cleverness and quick thinking in many areas of life. We understand negotiation and the art of making a good deal. And while we don't approve of theft, we can recognize the cunning and planning it might involve. Hermes brings all these complex ideas together. He represents the energy of exchange, the power of the quick mind, the importance of adaptability, and the sometimes blurry line between clever business and outright trickery. He's the patron of anyone who uses their wits to navigate the world, whether they are closing a business deal, solving a tricky puzzle, or even, perhaps, trying to get away with something. He is the god of ingenuity in all its forms. We've explored Hermes as the messenger, the traveler's guide, the god of trade, and the master of clever tricks. But there was one more very important and perhaps more serious job that Hermes performed, a role that truly showed his unique ability to move between different worlds. Hermes was the psychopomp, which is a Greek word meaning the guide of souls. Look at him standing there, maybe holding his special staff. This staff was key to this solemn duty. What does it mean to be the guide of souls? In ancient Greek belief, when a person died, their soul, their spirit or essence, didn't just disappear. It had to travel from the world of the living to the underworld, the kingdom ruled by the god Hades, where the spirits of the dead resided. This journey could be seen as confusing, maybe even frightening for the newly departed soul. They needed a guide, someone who knew the way and could lead them safely to their final destination. That guide was Hermes. It was one of his most ancient and important roles. Think about it. Who better to guide souls on this ultimate journey than the god who could travel faster than anyone, who knew all the paths, and who could move freely between the world of the living, the world of the gods on Olympus, and the shadowy realm of the dead below? He was the perfect transition guide. How did he do this? He often used his special staff, called the caduceus. Look closely at the staff Hermes might be holding in the image. The caduceus is usually shown as a staff or rod, often with two snakes wrapped around it, and sometimes with wings on top. Those wings, like the ones on his sandals and hat, symbolized his speed and his connection to messages and travel. The snakes had complex meanings, sometimes linked to healing, wisdom, or the earth, but also perhaps representing the journey between life and death. It was said that Hermes could use this staff to gently guide the souls, almost like charming them, leading them without fear or distress towards the entrance of the underworld. He could also supposedly use the staff to guide people into sleep or wake them up, showing his power over states of consciousness, bridging the gap between waking and sleeping, just as he bridged the gap between life and death. Imagine the scene. When someone died, Hermes would arrive, perhaps quietly and unseen by the living mourners. He would find the waiting soul, maybe confused or sad, and with a gentle touch of his caduceus, or just his reassuring presence, he would lead them on the path down to the river Styx. This was the river that formed the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the dead. There, the soul would often need to pay the ferryman, Charon, to be rowed across the river into Hades' kingdom. Hermes would make sure the soul reached the ferryman safely. His job was to ensure a smooth and orderly transition. This role made Hermes incredibly unique among the Olympian gods. Most gods stayed within their own domains. Poseidon ruled the sea, Hades ruled the underworld, Zeus ruled the sky. They didn't usually cross over into each other's territories easily. But Hermes? He could go anywhere. He was welcome on Olympus. He traveled all over the earth, and he could freely enter and leave the underworld without any problem. This ability to cross boundaries, to exist comfortably in different realms, was essential for his role as psychopomp. He was the ultimate liminal god, a god of thresholds, borders, and transitions. Think about what this meant to the ancient Greeks. Death is something all humans face. It's a great mystery and often a source of fear or sadness. Knowing that there was a specific god, a friendly and capable guide like Hermes, whose job it was to lead souls safely on that final journey, must have been very comforting. It suggested that death wasn't just a chaotic end, but an orderly transition, overseen by a divine guide. Hermes wasn't a frightening god of death. He was more like a helpful escort, ensuring the soul didn't get lost on its way. His presence made the passage less terrifying. This role also connects deeply to the idea of transitions in life. Death is the ultimate transition, but we go through many other kinds of transitions too. Think about moving from childhood to adulthood, leaving home for the first time, starting a new job, ending a relationship, moving to a new city. These are all times when we cross a kind of threshold, leaving one state or place behind and entering another. These transitions can sometimes feel confusing, uncertain, or even scary, just like the soul's journey might seem. Hermes, the god who guides souls between life and death, can also be seen as a symbol for navigating these life transitions. His ability to move smoothly between worlds represents the skill we need to adapt to change, to move from one phase of life to the next. His presence at borders and thresholds reminds us that change is a natural part of life, and that guidance and support can help us through these times. Look at Hermes again. He looks adaptable, ready for whatever comes next. He embodies the ability to handle change gracefully. So, this role as the guide of souls is perhaps Hermes' most profound duty. It shows his power over the boundaries between realms, his compassion in guiding the vulnerable, and his importance in one of life's most significant moments. He wasn't just about quick messages or clever deals. He was also about the deep, quiet journey that everyone must eventually take. He provided comfort and order in the face of the great unknown, acting as the calm and reliable guide through the ultimate transition. We've explored the many amazing jobs of Hermes: the speedy messenger, the guide for travelers, the god of trade and clever tricks, and the gentle guide for souls. We've seen how busy he was, always moving, always connecting different people and places. Look at him one more time, this god with the winged sandals and the quick mind. Why does his story, thousands of years after the ancient Greeks worshipped him, still matter to us today? What can we learn from this god of constant motion? Let's quickly recap his main areas. He was the god of communication. He carried messages, connected gods and humans, and made sure information flowed quickly and reliably. He was the god of travel and movement. He protected people on journeys, watched over roads and borders, and represented the freedom to explore and move between places. He was the god of trade and exchange. He understood deals, markets, and the cleverness needed for commerce. He was the god of cleverness and ingenuity, including trickery, representing the power of a quick mind to solve problems, sometimes in unconventional ways. And he was the god of transitions and guidance, especially guiding souls between life and death, showing his ability to navigate change and cross boundaries. Now, think about our world today. Do these ideas sound familiar? Are they relevant to our modern lives? Absolutely. Take communication. We live in an age defined by instant communication. Think about the internet, smartphones, social media, global news networks. Information travels around the world faster than Hermes could ever have dreamed, connecting billions of people. Hermes, as the original messenger god, is like the ancient symbol for this incredibly connected world we live in. He represents that fundamental human drive to share information, to stay in touch, to bridge distances with words and ideas. The need for clear, fast, reliable communication is more important now than ever before. What about travel and movement? People today travel more often and farther than ever before in history. We cross borders constantly, for work, for holidays, for family. We live in a globalized world where movement is essential. Hermes, the protector of travelers and the god of boundaries, still resonates with our experiences of journeys, both long and short. He represents the excitement of seeing new places, the challenges of navigating different cultures, and the need for safe passage in a world that sometimes feels uncertain. Consider trade and commerce. Our modern world runs on complex systems of buying and selling, from local shops to international corporations. Business, negotiation, marketing, finance, these are huge parts of modern life. Hermes, the god of merchants and clever deals, is like the patron saint of this fast-paced economic world. The need for clever thinking, adaptability, and good negotiation skills, qualities Hermes embodied, is crucial for success in business today. And what about cleverness and ingenuity? In a world facing complex problems like climate change, disease, or social issues, we desperately need smart thinking, new ideas, and creative solutions. We need people who can think outside the box, adapt quickly, and find clever ways forward, just like Hermes often did. He reminds us that intelligence and adaptability are vital tools for navigating a complicated world. Finally, think about transitions and guidance. Life today is full of change. People change jobs more often, move cities, experience shifts in family structures. We face constant technological and social changes. Navigating these transitions can be challenging. Hermes, the guide who moved smoothly between worlds and guided souls through the ultimate transition, represents our need for help and guidance during times of change. He symbolizes adaptability, the ability to move from one phase to another, and the hope of finding our way through uncertainty. So you see, even though we don't worship Hermes anymore, the domains he ruled over are still central to our lives. Communication, travel, trade, cleverness, adapting to change, these are all fundamental parts of the modern human experience. Hermes bundles all these vital, energetic aspects of life together. He represents a world that is always moving, always connecting, always changing. Looking at Hermes standing here, let him be a reminder of the importance of these things in our own lives. He encourages us to be good communicators, to be open to travel and new experiences, to be clever and adaptable in our dealings, and to face life's inevitable changes with courage and maybe even a little bit of his trickster spirit. He's the ancient god who perfectly captures the busy, connected, ever-moving energy of our modern world. So Hermes, the god of many jobs you see here, reminds us how important connection, communication, and movement are. He represents the power of cleverness, the need to adapt to change, and the value of guidance through life's transitions, big and small. Unlike gods fixed in one place, Hermes embodies a life that is busy, always moving, always connecting different worlds. His ancient stories encourage us to be adaptable, quick-witted, and open to the constant flow of life, navigating its challenges with skill and perhaps a touch of cleverness.